Thanks very kindly. Thanks for inviting me, and let me just go ahead and share.
Wait, hold on a minute. We got. Are you getting him? Oh, he's gonna share, go ahead. He's sharing, yes. Okay. Okay, there, we got, it's on the next picture.
We're all set to go.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm just going to paste into the chat if I can find my meeting controls. Um, sorry, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment just so that I can get back to controls. And I'm pasting into the chat
Okay.
um, the URL where you can get all of the slides that I'm going to be showing you tonight. It's quite a bit of information, so it's not a bad idea to to get a copy of the slides. And you'll also have my email address there, so if you have any questions, by all means, get in touch with me, and I'm happy to help you out if I can. Okay, let's get rid of that. There we go. Okay, so this evening's presentation is all about backup. And we're going to talk about, first off, why you should back up. Most people, it's fairly obvious, but there may be some nuances there that some people may not be aware of. And then we'll be talking about the different approaches to backing up. First off, it would be just your data and doing either through manual backup or an automated backup. And we'll talk about the benefits that can come about with real-time backup and file versioning and cloud backup. And then we'll talk about backing up everything using computer imaging. And then some other considerations that everybody should consider when they are running backups. Oh, I just thought I have to stop share again because I just realized I didn't select to share sound, and I do have a video clip. Okay, so axiom number one, there are two kinds of people in the world, those who've lost data and those who will lose data. And that's almost a given. Axiom number two says that data in only one place is at risk of loss. And that's a given. So you want to make sure that you have all your important data in more than one place so that you can recover. So data loss can happen in a lot of different ways. You could have physical destruction of a hard drive. You could have an electrical surge that fries your computer and its hard drive or solid state drive. You could have malware get on your computer. You could have a fire or a theft. Or you could accidentally delete a file or modify a file and save it to disk, overwriting your good data. Now, I'm going to show you a very short video clip. This gentleman is a photographer in Portland, and he knows what he's doing around computers. And so he was actually prepared, but he had a major disaster. And he's going to talk about two backup means. One is Drobo, and he mentions it, and it's a network attached storage that he has in his home. And the second is Backblaze, which is a commercial cloud backup provider. So let's take a look at this video.
But what I did, I was actually formatting a smaller hard drive, and I was multitasking and wrapping presents, and we had the whole holiday season happening and people visiting and kids sick and lack of sleep, and I clicked the wrong hard drive and I formatted my big Drobo. I formatted 18 terabytes of data, all my videos, these kinds of videos that I do, instructionals, videos from the field of epic things that I see with wildlife or landscapes and light, time lapse, photos, you name it, 17 terabytes. I formatted it. And when I tried to do a recovery, a lot of it was corrupted. So fortunately, I had the second Drobo with all the data. And right now you can see I'm moving my file with all my images that are in my library back across from one Drobo to the other. It's a little slow flowing through the computer and out from one through the processor and back to the other. It's going to take about 17 hours to move 10 terabytes essentially of photo data. But all that stuff's localized here. If it had been a complete crash, I could always go into Backblaze and request them to mail me hard drives with all that data. I'd have to pay a hefty deposit, which would be returnable once I send the drives back, but at least it's an insurance policy for total loss. And, you know, my own stupid fault here, hitting the wrong button, not paying close enough attention, moving, multitasking in a way that I'm not great at, particularly when sleep deprived. But It just goes to show it can happen to anybody, so make sure you're backing up your data, preferably both locally and in the cloud.
So I think his statement is really true that it can happen to anybody. So he was quite knowledgeable, just accidentally hit the wrong button. And so you don't want to be in that position where you lose all your important data just because of a mistake or one of these other disasters that's on the screen. So you have to first off start thinking about where you're going to back up your files to. So one option, if you have typically a desktop computer, would be an internal hard drive. So you could install a new hard drive or a solid state drive in your computer. Typical sizes around 2 to 20 terabytes, and cost per gigabyte is about 3 or 4 cents. So it's pretty cheap. You could also back up, if you have very limited requirements, an SD card, and sizes of those run 32 gigabytes to 1 terabyte. And the cost is quite expensive compared to a spinning hard drive or a solid state drive, about 11 cents to $118 per gigabyte. And it's the larger capacity ones that are on the high end side of that. You could back up to a flash drive. Typical sizes are 32 gigabytes to 512 gigabytes and around 12 to 29 cents per gigabyte. These prices may be a little bit old. External hard drive, 1 to 20 terabytes and a cost of 3 to 7 cents per gigabyte. Now, personally, I think that the best option on there by far is the external hard drive. It gives you that large capacity and a low cost per gigabyte for storage. And probably more important is that you can separate it from your computer. So it provides protection from most disasters. All the other ones, internal hard drives, well, internal hard drive in particular, you can't separate it from your computer. So if you have a fire, theft, electrical problem, those can take out your backups as well as the main data storage. So external hard drives is by far the best way to go about doing this. So what's on your computer? You have your operating system, Windows or Linux or Mac OS. Then you have all your programs that you installed, both ones that came with the operating system as well as ones you've added on. And then data. And I like to think of data as being anything that you create. So why backup? Well, if your computer dies, you can buy a new one. There's no problem with that. Just a matter of money. If your operating system or your programs get corrupted or deleted, you can reinstall them. But if your documents or pictures or videos or anything that you create are lost, nobody else has copies of those. So you're going to lose it if you're the only one who has it and you only have the one copy. So if it's only your data that's really important, you can replace everything else. Why not just back up your data? You know, after all, that's the one thing that you can't replace through another means. So it can be a solution for sure. Your data is what's really important. And backups can be really small because typically our data files are not really huge. And it can run quite quickly to run the backup. But keep in mind that it doesn't include the operating system or the programs. And we'll come back later on to talk about that aspect of backing up. So let's look at manual backup. So you can just copy all your important files to anywhere you want, an external hard drive, flash drive, cloud storage, anything like that to preserve them. And you can store them off-site even. It's a tedious process though, and anything that's tedious to do, I think is easy to forget to do. And it's also easy to miss some important files. So if you back up just your data, are you backing up all your important data? This is an example of where Thunderbird, which is the mail client that I use, where it stores my email. So it's under the C drive, where Windows is installed, under users, my username, app data, which happens to be a hidden folder, roaming, Thunderbird, profiles, some random name, and then mail. All my mail is stored under there. So if I am pulling it down off of the mail server and deleting it from the mail server, then that may be my only copy. Here's another example. So I use On1 Photo Raw as my photo editor, and all the edits are kept in a database. And so again, it's under Windows, Users, CTailer, that hidden folder again, roaming on one photo raw 2025 photo settings cache. So once again, would I know that I have to back up that data? If I don't, and I'm only backing up my data and I have a disaster, I can install my operating system. I can install all my programs, including On1 Photo RAW. When I go to look at all my photo edits would be missing. Not a good situation to be in. So it's tedious to do it as a manual process, so at least we could automate it. So we can configure a program to do the backups, and then the computer remembers to do it so I don't have to. So some additional, potentially, you can get additional benefits for automating backups. You can get real-time backup, and that's where files are backed up as they're created or changed on your system. And then file versioning, where the backup of your data file, every time it gets backed up, the previous version is actually saved as well and can be recovered, potentially for years, so you can get old versions of files. So real-time backup, the way it works is you're working away on your computer and you save, in this case, a Word document to your computer, and the program is monitoring for new or changed files, and as soon as it sees that save, it'll automatically copy that file to the backup drive. File versioning is where you'll get a unique copy every time you save. So here I have a document on my computer called budget.doc. And when it gets copied to the backup drive, it doesn't get copied just as budget.doc. It'll get copied as budget.doc and a timestamp as part of the file name. And so the next time it gets saved, it'll get saved with a new date and timestamp and a new one. And so every time you save it, you can actually get a copy of that file unique so that you can recover any of those should you want to go back to a previous version. So real-time backup and file versioning, you can get both of those with file history, which is built into Windows. So it is in Windows 10 and 11. Unfortunately, it's a little bit, I call it lobotomized in Windows 11. It still functions, but there are a few workarounds that you have to do because of things that Microsoft has been doing. It supports almost real-time backup, so you can have backup files every 10 minutes. It'll look for new or changed files, and then right through to you can choose time periods up to just once a day. And then it does have file versioning as well. It's folder based, so you don't specify that you want a particular file or a drive backed up. You actually specify folders to be backed up, and then all files and folders within that folder will be backed up. So the defaults will be most folders underneath your profile. So it'll be things like pictures, documents, videos, a bunch of other ones that are under your default profile. It backs up new or changed files every hour, and it'll keep versions forever or until you run out of space on your backup drive. The customizations, you can add or remove folders. So if you happen to be storing your data files on, say, drive D, you can add folders from drive D, so they'll get backed up. If it's backing up folders that you don't particularly want backup or you don't care about, you can actually remove those from the file history configuration, so they won't back up those files. And then in terms of how frequently it backs up, you can do it between 10 minutes and daily. And there's a number of discrete time periods. We'll see that in a minute. And keeping versions, how long you want to keep the versions for, until space is required, or you can have discrete periods of up to 2 years. So the initial setup, and I'm going to be showing you the screens as they exist on Windows 10. They're a little bit different in Windows 10, and I'll talk about the deficiencies there in a bit. So you plug in an external drive that you wanted to use for storing backups. It doesn't have to be only used for this purpose. You can actually use it for other purposes as well, but you want to have a fair amount of space available on it. Typically, I would say most people, you probably want to have at least a couple hundred gigs of space on that external drive. I'll show you in a bit how you can decide how big this is going to actually get. So then you run the Settings app and you go to Update and Security Backup. And you see on the right-hand side, it's pretty empty. The only thing you can do at that point is add a drive. And when you click on the add a drive, it'll come up with a list of disks that you can choose from. You can see here I have 3 physical drives that are installed, or 3 partitions really, that are installed on my computer. And notice that drive C isn't there, so you can't use file history to back up to the C drive. And so you just click on it. So in this case here, I clicked on local disk Z, which is a 1 terabyte drive that is basically empty. And then if you do nothing else, file history is working, but it's working with the defaults. Okay. It won't start automatically. It'll start automatically, but it won't start immediately. Typically, I find it takes about a half hour for it to decide to start doing its thing, but it will eventually kick in and start working with the defaults. If you want to change any of the defaults, and I recommend that everybody do, take a look at those and consciously make your decisions here. Click on the More Options, and then it comes up with the options screen. So at the top, you have backup my files and every hour. That's the default. So you can see over on the right-hand side what the options are. So you can choose every 10 minutes through to daily. Now, I recommend most people, why not do it every 10 minutes? That way, if you have a hard disk failure, you should never lose more than 10 minutes worth of work. However, if you want, you can choose a laxer time frame or a longer time frame, and that will cause the backup drive to fill up a little bit slower. How long to keep your backups? And forever is the default. And forever means until you run out of space, and at the point where all of a sudden file history will just stop working. So I highly recommend that people come in here and change it to something else. Until space is required is good. If you're not going to use the drive for any other purposes, what will happen is as it fills up, it'll automatically clear off older backups to make room for new files being backed up. Or if you want, and especially useful if you're going to be using the drive for other purposes and you don't want to dedicate all of the space to file history, is to choose a discrete time frame. I have I think quite a lot of data files, and I have it set to 2 years. And I think currently I'm using about 250 or 300 gigabytes worth of space on that external drive. So 1 terabyte drive, I'm only using about a third of it, and I have the ability to go back and get files from as long as 2 years ago. If you do want to add an additional folder beyond the ones that it's already backing up, you can click on there. You get a standard Windows dialog box. You point to a folder, and it'll start backing up that folder as well as everything underneath it. If you want to remove a folder, so for example, here on the right-hand side, I have it that it actually had saved games. Well, I don't know any program that actually uses the saved games folder underneath your profile, but if you wanted to remove that, you would just click on it, and then you have the option to remove. Now, they also have an option to exclude folders, and first blush, it seems like, well, why would you want to exclude a folder? You just don't back it up. But there is a case, because if you choose a folder, it'll back up that folder and everything beneath it, including subfolders. So say you have your documents folder being backed up, and you have a folder underneath that called junk. And you just put scratch stuff in there that you really don't care if you ever lose it, and so you don't want to back up those files. That's where you would exclude a folder that is a subfolder of something that is being backed up. If you want to stop using file history, don't just unplug the drive. If you do that, after a couple of weeks, Windows will complain and say, well, we haven't seen the file history drive in a while. You might want to plug it in. So if you click on Stop Using Drive, it will stop backing up the files to that drive. It won't delete any of the backup files that are on that drive, and you can actually manually go in and recover any of the files off of it. Or if you wanted to repurpose the drive and just format it again, use it for something else, that's your choice. So how do you recover old versions of files? Windows, because its file history is built into Windows, they've made it really slick. So all you have to do is go to the file. In this case, I have backupstrategies.pptx, this file I'm presenting right now. And you go in there in File Explorer, click the file, right-click it, and choose Properties. And then in the Properties dialog box, there's a Previous Versions tab. Click on that, and you have all of the versions of the files that were saved using file history. So you can just go to any one of the ones you want. You can see the date and time that it was actually saved. And you can open it directly, just verify that it's the information you want, or you can go to Restore or Restore To. If you do a restore, it'll overwrite the current version of the file that exists in that folder. If you don't want to overwrite that file, maybe you want to compare it to an older version of the file, or you want to manually merge the data in the two files, then you do a restore to, and you point to a new location, and it'll restore that backup file to that location, and then you can deal with that along with the current version of the file. How do you recover a deleted file? So if I have a file here called file to be deleted.txt that I accidentally deleted, if I go back to here, I had to right click on the file in order to do the properties and then previous versions and restore. Well, if I have a deleted file, I have nothing to right click on. So what you do there is you go into the File Explorer. On the Home tab in the ribbon, there's a History button. And so if you click on that, it'll open up a VCR type control where you can go back through all of the times when the backup actually ran until you find the file. So in this case here, it'll always start with the most recent. And so here I don't see my file to be deleted.txt. So if I go back, eventually I get to the point where that file actually did exist, and then I can do the recovery on it. Notice that there's no restore to. You're not going to overwrite anything because the file was deleted, so we'll just restore it to the proper location. Especially if you have keeping things until forever, so it'll eventually run out of space. At some point, you're going to run out of space on the drive. And even if you have a discrete time frame, you might want to clean up some of the old versions, because if you're using the drive for other purposes at the same time, you might run out of space. So you want to do a cleanup. So if you have to do that, then you go to the advanced settings, clean up versions, and then you can select a time frame that you want to delete older versions of files. So it'll never delete every copy of the file. It'll keep at least one. So if it only backed up the file once, that file will be kept. But if you have multiple versions of a file, then if any of them fall within the period that you specify that it's older than that, it'll clean up those copies of the files. Okay, now the bad news. So file history in Windows 11. And this is not a great story. Microsoft removed file history from the settings application. The only way you can configure it now, including setting it up, is using Control Panel. Now, problem number one is that file history in Control Panel only backs up desktop, contacts, favorites, and libraries. The default libraries in Windows are documents, music, pictures, and videos. You can't add new folders. But the workaround for this is that you can add folders to a library. You can either create a brand new library or add folders to an existing library, and then they will be backed up properly. And the extra slides that I have in the downloadable PDF shows more details about how to work with libraries if you're not familiar with them. Problem number two in using file history in Windows 11. The ribbon got removed from File Explorer. So, You might recall just a couple of slides ago, I said if you had a deleted file, you had to go to the ribbon in File Explorer and click on File History. Well, new versions of File Explorer don't have the ribbon. So the workaround is that you can run the settings, and in the search box in settings, just type in File History, and the first hit will be restore your files with file history. Click on that, and then you'll get that VCR control type thing where you can actually go back and find your older files that have been deleted. And here I went back. I started at 79 of 79 backups. Use previous to find version. It tells me when the backup ran. I can go back to when I know the file existed or just browse through to try and find it. And then I'll be able to reselect the file and click the restore button. Problem number 3. There's only one reason I can think of that Microsoft would actually remove file history from settings. And that's if they're planning to remove file history completely from Windows in the future at some point. It hasn't been deprecated yet, and Microsoft has not stated that they have any plans to remove file history. But why would they actually go to the work of removing file history from settings rather than just leave it there? I think that they must be thinking at some point that they just want to get rid of file history completely, or perhaps it's just they just don't want it to be as easily discovered by users in order to keep them from using it. What do they want everybody to use? They want everybody to store everything to OneDrive in the cloud. They want you to run out of space. The free space that everybody gets on there is, I forget what you get, 12 gigabytes or something like that. You run out of space, and then they nag you to buy additional space from them. So personally, I think that the time has come to look for a replacement for file history. For those two things the file history does very, very well, real-time backups and file versioning. Personally, I think the free and open source free file sync looks good. I've actually been using it alongside of file history for a while now. The downloadable version of the presentation in PDF format has a lot of slides on how to set up free file sync to use as a replacement for file history. And there's the URL where you can pick up the program for free. Please note at the bottom, inclusion here should not be taken as any sort of endorsement on the part of the Ottawa PC User Group or Chris Taylor. If you use free file sync and it does horrible things to you, please don't blame me. I know a lot of people are using it, and everybody I know who uses it is very happy with it. Let's talk about cloud backup. So if people wanted to unmute themselves and say, what is the definition of the cloud? Or just think about it for a second, what you think is the definition of the cloud. I think the best definition is someone else's computer. And that has a lot of implications. So cloud can be a backup solution. It is your data file that's data files that are critical. So if you have enough cloud storage for all your important files, it can be a backup solution, and you can get terabyte storage for free from a couple of providers out there. Some of the providers are considerably less than that, but you can get a considerable amount of storage if you want it. Keep in mind that it doesn't back up your operating system and your programs, and typically you don't want to do that to the cloud just because of the size of it. So cloud backup does have a lot of benefits for sure. You get off-site backup, so that is protection against fire and theft, things like that. Electrical surges on your computer and so forth. The ability to access your backup files from anywhere in the world as long as you've got an internet connection. That's kind of cool. Synchronizing between computers, real-time backup, and sharing files with others can be done with not all cloud backup providers, but it can work with most. I note here that synchronizing between computers can be a problem if you get a corrupted file or you get file encrypting malware that will happily synchronize the corrupted file or the encrypted file between multiple computers. Okay, cloud backup is great, but what if they go out of business? So I don't think Google is going to go out of business anytime soon. Microsoft is going to be around a long time, but a lot of the other cloud providers out there, I don't know what their business model is. They may be offering me free space. How can they afford to do that? What is their, how are they going to stay in business? So what is the mitigation for going out of business? Nothing unique should be stored in the cloud. Okay. It should not be the only place that you store important files. So if somebody goes out of business and I wake up one morning, I go to my cloud storage and they're gone, I just sign up with another cloud provider and get all my files copied over to there as well, and then I'm back in business. What if they're hacked? Now, quite frankly, I think that companies like Google and Microsoft, they can do security better than I can, but even they make mistakes. This was back in February 2020, where Google admitted to the fact that some videos in Google Photos were incorrectly exported to unrelated user archives. So if I had been using them, all of a sudden I find out that, oh, my videos were shared with other people. Not such a good thing. So the mitigation, if there's anything that's sensitive and you're storing it in the cloud, make sure you encrypt it. What about speed? So I used to be on a cable modem with 5 megabit per second upload and 30 megabit per second download and a 300 gigabyte per month cap. So a backup of 1 terabyte worth of data would take 20 days. I could restore it in 3.5 days because I have much faster download speed than upload. But I'd blow my monthly cap of 300 gigabytes and then I would be spending all kinds of extra money to my internet service provider. So the mitigation, don't back up everything. But just because you don't back up everything doesn't mean your other files aren't important. They're just maybe not as critical as the ones you want to make sure you do back up to the cloud. So some of the options you have for free cloud backup, Google Drive, I use that, 15 gigabytes for free. I'm up to about 10 gigabytes now in use. You can get extra space if you want. Canadian $48 a year for additional space on Google Drive. There are lots of others out there. The P Cloud I think gives you 1 terabyte. Terabox gives you a terabyte. Ice Drive I think will actually give you a terabyte as well. So there's lots and lots of providers out there that will give you free cloud storage as well as paid storage if you go beyond what they'll give you for free. So how do I use cloud backup? They can be automatically synchronize my files between multiple computers. This is really handy. I have a laptop computer. I give a lot of in-person presentations, and so I take my laptop with me, but my presentations are automatically synchronized between my desktop computer and my laptop computer. So I know it's the same version of the file all the time. If I'm out giving a presentation and I make a correction to a typo and I save the file, by the time I get home, it's already updated on my home computer. So I always have the most recent version of the file on all my computers. That can be really, really handy. I can have important files available through the web through any internet connected computer. So here I have a Word document and I have my passport. Passport's sensitive information, so it's stored encrypted. And then I can access them from any other computer. When I'm traveling, I might have my plane reservations on there. If I'm taking a cruise, I might have the deck plans and the restaurants on board and the itinerary for excursions and things like that. I can have car reservations, hotel reservations, all of that stored in the cloud so that if I have to, I can access them from anywhere. I can share files with others. You're not going to have friends very long if you, say, are sharing 30 megabyte JPEG photos and you're sending around 100 photos. People are not going to appreciate they filling up their mailbox with photos. So why not put them in the cloud and then you can give them a link. And it can be either a one-way link so they can download the file, or you can have a two-way link. So you can have collaborative efforts where they can actually share the file, they can make modifications to it, and then you can access the modifications automatically. Really handy. There are a lot of commercial cloud backup providers as well. Backblaze is one of the big ones for sure. Carbonite, iDrive, so forth. Um, Most of them, they know that you can get raw storage for free from a lot of providers. They'll give you other capabilities because they want to entice you to actually part with your money. So things like automated backup, like Hudson Henry in the video talked about, backup using a shipped drive. So if your first backup, you might have hundreds of gigabytes worth of files. Do you really want to back them up over the internet? Well, you could actually have them ship you drives. You put the files on there, send them back to them, and then they copy them over into their cloud storage. Or if you have to recover, you can get them to put your files onto a drive, ship you the drive, you pay a deposit, you get your files put back onto your local storage, and then you ship the drives back and get your deposit back. Synchronize files across multiple devices. The terms and conditions really vary widely. So really look at the terms and conditions if you're going to use commercial cloud backup. Just as an example, some will allow you to have as many devices as you want with a fixed amount of storage, or some might have unlimited storage with a single device, things like that. So find the commercial cloud backup provider that matches the way that you want to use your computer and your data. Most of them seem to want about $70 a year US for the service. So why not just back up your data to internal or external hard drives, flash drives, or the cloud? It's your data that's what's important, right? If you have a failure of your hard drive, you have to replace the hard drive. Then you can reinstall Windows. Then you can reinstall all your programs. And you remember where all your license keys are. And then finally, you get to recover all your data files from your backup, however you've been backing them up, to a flash drive, to an external hard drive, to the cloud, whatever. That can take a long time to do that. Reinstall Windows, reinstall, reconfigure all your programs before you can actually get back in business. And don't forget, did you back up all your data? So maybe you didn't think that there was some place that data was being squirreled away on your behalf that was not being backed up. So the solution to that is back up everything with what is known as imaging. And there are additional slides in the PDF file on things like locking down external storage devices, single drive letter, some other handy hints on dealing with external drives and so forth. So disk imaging is a snapshot of everything that's on your computer. So it has the operating system, programs, and your data all copied to usually a single file on an external hard drive. So disaster recovery when you've got imaging. So you have your hard drive failure. You can't get around, you got to replace the hard drive. But then you boot from the flash drive or the DVD that the backup program will allow you to create, and it has an operating system on it as well as the backup program. And you run the backup program and you run a recovery. You point to your external hard drive that has your backups on it, and then a couple of hours later, everything is restored. Okay? Your operating system, your programs, and your data, all with just a couple of clicks of the mouse. What are some free options for imaging? I wrote a program or an article a number of years ago on finding a backup program. I was using Acronis at the time, and I got a little bit tired of the way they messed around with the user interface. And so I went looking for a new program to do backup. And I wrote an article on what was important to me and how I went about finding it. Now, your needs may vary, but you might find that article be useful just to think through the process of what's important to you in a backup program. So I actually looked at 4. One of them is no longer available as a free program. And so EaseUS to do backup, AOME Backupper, and Paragon Backup and Recover are all 3 very good programs, and each of them actually brings some interesting, unique features to the backup process. Just as an example, Paragon Backup and Recover allows you to back up to a hidden partition. And that can be really handy if you're worried about malware, because most malware doesn't know how to actually attack files on a hidden partition. I personally use EaseUS to do backup. So imaging, you can do the entire computer, every drive that's on it. You can do full or incremental backups. Full is absolutely everything. And then incrementals is just the changes that happened since the backup ran the last time. They all have scheduling built in, so it can automate it for you. They can all do disaster recovery, so recovering an entire partition or the entire computer with either a bootable flash drive or a bootable DVD. But you can also do file or folder recovery, so you don't have to recover an entire partition if all you want to do is recover one file that got corrupted or deleted, no problem. I'm going to show you some examples of EaseUS to do backup. Don't worry too much about the details on here. I'm just showing you this, show you a fairly straightforward process. Most of the backup programs are fairly similar. So you just click on Add a Backup. I can click on its name to rename it to something that makes sense to me. I want to back up a disk. It'll come up with all of the disks that are on my computer. I can select individual partitions, or usually easiest just select the entire disk. Click on OK. Then you say where you want to store your backups. And in this case, I want a local drive. And so this is my drive Z, an external drive that's plugged into my computer. Click on OK. And under the options, there's all kinds of things like, do you want to do it as full backups or incremental backups? Do you want to have a schedule? Do you want to do encryption of your backups? Things like that. The defaults are usually pretty good. The backup scheme, on that tab, you can define your schedule. And then you just start the backup. And if you set up a schedule, it'll just automatically run on that schedule. You can also have things like, usually I know EaseUS to do, but backup has it. If your computer is off at the time it was scheduled to run a backup, you can set it so that it'll just run it at first opportunity. It can run while you're using your computer. It's not hugely impactful on the performance of your computer, but I always run my backups at 1:30 in the morning when I'm not using my computer. But if you typically shut down your computer overnight, you might be forced into running your backups while you're using your computer, and that can work. If you want to do a recovery, you select the backup job that you created, then you click on Recover, and then you can either do an entire partition or you can do files and folders. If you have multiple full or incremental backups, you can choose the date and time of the actual backup that you want to recover from. Emergency disk creation. So this is very important that you do with whatever program you have. In EaseUS to do backup, it's under the Tools menu, Create Emergency Disk, and then it'll give you an opportunity to do either a flash drive or a DVD. And one thing I'll just give a little bit of caution on, be careful creating the flash drive if it's on a USB drive. It will happily allow you to create it on any USB attached storage that you have connected to your computer, including things like your backup disk or whatever that has data on it. It will warn you, but I usually tell people if you're unsure, unplug all external storage devices from your computer before you do this. Plug in the one flash drive that you want to use for an emergency recovery, and then you can't accidentally select the wrong thing. It will wipe everything that is on that drive. Okay, there's an awful lot more that can be configured. Most of the programs actually have very good manuals. They talk a lot about strategies and backup and things like that. So definitely take a look at the manual with whatever program you choose. So there are some problems with imaging. So, a month of my backups in gigabytes. The full backup takes about 713 gigabytes. It's now up to about 1.2 terabytes. This slide is a little old. But 30 days worth of incrementals running every day is only 123 gigabytes when it was back here. So I needed, for a month's worth of backups, about 836 gigabytes of space. I'm now up to closer to 1.5 terabytes, but it's not bad to be able to recover everything to the day. So mitigations on the fact that it does use a fair amount of space. External hard drives are inexpensive, so you can get a 4 terabyte drive for around 115 bucks, probably less, and that's Canadian prices. And then one of the other mitigations is that incremental backups are relatively small, so they don't take up an awful lot of space. Another problem with imaging, full image backups can take hours. My full backup now usually takes about 3.5 hours. Mitigation for that? Well, first off, you usually run it with incrementals. So you run one full backup and then incrementals for maybe a month or two, and then reinitialize things to do another full backup. So my incremental files run in under 5 minutes. And then even for the big one, I can run scheduled backups so they run when I'm sleeping. So I don't care if it takes 3.5 hours to run a full backup. The backup is done before I get up in the morning. So I think that more than one solution is really the thing that you want to look for. So backing up just your data is not a bad thing. Okay. So file history or free file sync will give you near real-time backup as you make changes to your files. That can be really, really nice. Like I said, I have file history set so that it runs every 10 minutes. It looks for new or changed files. So I should never lose more than 10 minutes worth of work if I have a hard disk failure. Versioning is really nice because I can get years worth of backups of my data files. So they don't take up an awful lot of space. So if I have a file that I back up or I change once a year, it might be a 1 megabyte or 100 megabyte file. And if I can get back versions that are 3 years old and it's only taking me, 300 megabytes worth of space for a big PowerPoint file or something like that, that's not bad. So that versioning is really nice to be able to go back and get those previous versions of files when you're actively working on them and changing them over time. Cloud backup brings a lot of strengths to it, so you can access from any computer in the world. You can share files with others. You can share files off of your home computer. I don't recommend it for anybody who doesn't really, really understand the implications of sharing out files from your computer. So it's not easy to do that in a secure fashion, whereas it's relatively simple to share them from cloud backups. And the ability to synchronize multiple computers so that your really important files are on all your computing devices. That's really nice. And then having real-time backup through the cloud backup is something that you can get to, usually with a little app that installs on your computer. And all of the major ones do it. Google has it with Google Drive for desktop. Microsoft has it with their OneDrive is built into Windows. Other cloud providers have it as well. You just install a little app and then it can do that real-time backup as well as synchronizing between computers. And then backing up everything. So image backup is important. So it gives you that ability to do disaster recovery of your entire computer without having to manually install the operating system and the programs before you recover your data files from your backup solution. And imaging also does allow you to do that recovery of individual files and folders through a File Explorer type interface where you can just browse within the image backup and find the files you want and then copy them back to your hard drive or your primary storage. Now, if there's anybody who's an Apple user out here, I'm jealous. Apple Mac OS users have Time Machine. And everybody I know who uses a Mac, they use Time Machine. It automatically gives, it's really cool. If you plug a drive into a Mac, it'll ask you, oh, do you want to use this for Time Machine? This is all I've heard. I have no experience with Mac. And if you say yes, then that's it. It just starts working. And it will give you backups, hourly backups for the last 24 hours, daily backups for the last month, weekly for all previous months, and then the oldest are automatically deleted when space is required for newer files. And even going back to 2012 with OS X Lion, you can actually start a computer with a Time Machine disk. So if you have a meltdown of your computer, you buy a new one, you plug in your Time Machine disk, and you can recover all of your programs and your data and everything back to the new computer. Really, really nice. Okay, offsite backup is really important. It mitigates some of the rare dangers. So if I don't have offsite backup and I have a fire, it's going to burn my computer, it's going to burn my backup drive. If I have a theft, they're probably going to steal the computer and my backup drive. If I have file encrypting malware, because my backup drive is constantly connected to my computer, the file encrypting malware can happily encrypt my backup files. But those are rarer dangers, and so therefore I think they can be less frequent. Personally, I do offsite backups once a month, but that does mean that I could lose up to a month's worth of work and be faced with, trying to recover those data files that I created during that month. But it's not likely that I'm going to really need that. Now, if I was running a business, I'd probably want offsite backup daily. You can't afford to lose a month's worth of your business records and things like that. Where do you store it? Well, your desk drawer at work or a friend's house, preferably not friend next door. If you have a tornado go through, you don't want to have it take out your house and your friend's house. Because it's more at risk for theft when it's stored somewhere else, I highly recommend that you encrypt your backups. Some external drives do include an option for full disk encryption. Western Digital drives are pretty big on that. It's optional, but the software is right on the drive that you can go in, configure the encryption, and then every time you plug that drive in, it'll request the password in order to access any of the files on the drive. But most imaging software also includes optional encryption. So you can just go into the configuration screens for it. Say you want it encrypted, you put in a password. It doesn't require the password to back up your files. So your backups will run normally, but it does require the password if you want to recover any of the data from your backup files. One thing of note, file history really doesn't allow for offsite backup. It expects to be attached to your computer all the time. And it's not easy to have more than one drive doing file history, so you can't sort of swap one drive in for another very easily. So unfortunately, file history really expects to be constantly attached to your computer. So how many backups do you need? I think all important data should be stored in at least 3 places. So the primary one is on your working computer. It's the working files you have day to day. You want to have a local backup, which could be file history, could be image backups, and you get frequent backups that way, and you get automated backups that way. And you get protection from the most common things that you're going to run across: accidental deletion of a file, corruption of a file, a hard drive failure, things like that. And then you want to have offsite backup, and that can be cloud or image backups that are stored on external drives that you just store elsewhere. And that'll give you protection from those more or rarer threats, things like fire, theft, electrical surge, file encrypting malware, and so forth. So it's important that you think about your needs. Your needs are not going to match my needs, and that's perfectly understandable. You have to think about what's important for you to be able to recover. My girlfriend, she does backups once a week, even with images. And I've warned her on multiple occasions that she can lose up to a week's worth of data if her drive fails or her computer melts down or whatever. And she has just consciously decided that that's fine for her. For me, I'm willing to lose, up to a day. So I run my main imaging once a day, and my important data files and things like that are backed up using file history as well as real free file sync. which means that I should lose no more than 10 minutes worth of work of my important data files. Choose the solutions that work right for you. There's no point in having a backup solution that is ineffective or doesn't work well for you or is awkward for you to use. If it's awkward, you're not going to use it. And you wanted something that is just smooth, no friction between you and the backup solution. It's very, very important to test your backup processes. We don't back up for backup's sake. We back up so we can recover. So you have to verify that you can actually recover your files. Now that's easily done with file history. You could just go in, look for a file that you've been working on, find a version from a couple of days ago, recover it to a new location, verify that it was able to recover that file. Not quite as easy when you have image backups. Now, if you're just verifying one file, you can still do the same thing. You can just go into the backup, say you want to recover a file or a folder of files, and then recover them to a new location and verify that it actually works. But what about the entire partitions or entire hard drives? Backing up those using image, that gives you your disaster recovery. Now, you could, if you really wanted to, go into boot with the recoverable media, point to your backup drive, say you want to recover your entire C drive, and say go. And it should work. I don't recommend that anybody actually does that. If something goes wrong, then you just blown away your C drive. So, but I do recommend that as a minimum, you try to recover some files or folders and do it while booted from the recovery media. Okay. I had a case in point a number of years ago where I had not actually tested that aspect of it. I did have a problem with my hard drive. Well, it was actually a laptop computer. It went back to the manufacturer. I had actually verified that the hard drive itself was okay. And I told them, I said, the problem's not on the hard drive. Look for the solution elsewhere. When I got the computer back, they had replaced the motherboard and they had wiped the hard drive and laid down a fresh copy of their factory fresh installation. And so I said, okay, well, that's not a problem. I can do a recovery from my image backup. I went to do it, and while booted from the recovery media, I was not able to access the USB drive attached to the computer. Now, as it turns out, another way that I could do recovery was plug in the external drive to another computer and then access that over the network from the computer where I was doing the recovery. And that worked. It was a little bit slow, but it actually worked. But I had, I was nervous for a little while when I always was thinking, whoa, I can't recover my data. And so it's really, really important to make sure you can boot from the recovery media. You can get into the program that will allow you to do the recovery, and you can access your backup drive and recover, at least test a couple of files that you can recover the actual files. That is pretty good in terms of making sure that everything is recoverable. So for image backup solutions, make sure you create that emergency recovery disk or the flash drive. Test booting from the recovery media. Know what keystrokes are required to get you into that booting from that recovery media rather than your drive C. Test accessing the backups while booted from the recovery media. Very, very important. As I say, we don't back up for backup's sake. We back up so we can recover. So I have 3 very, very important strategies. Make sure you back up. Back up. And can anybody guess what number 3 is? Backup. Okay, I'm just going to do a brief advert for the Ottawa Peace User Group, and then I'll throw it open for questions or comments. If anybody wants to join us at our meetings, we welcome guests at any time at any of our meetings. You can come as often as you want as a guest, no problem at all. Our main club meetings is the second Wednesday of the month, and we'll have in a speaker on a particular topic. On other Wednesday evenings, we have Q&A sessions, which are all just free form. People can ask anything, share information, neat stuff they've come across, whatever. If you want to join in our group, it's $20 a year. And right now we have a special on. If you join before the end of the month, you'll get 2 years for the price of one. But as I said, guests are welcome at any time, at any of our meetings, any number of times. We do have two member-only services. We have a 24/7 discussion forum online, and we do have one-on-one remote assistance where we can team you up with a volunteer who thinks they can solve your problem, and then they'll connect to your computer over Microsoft Quick Assist or on Zoom, and you can work through the problem together. They can see your screen. Optionally, you can give them control of your keyboard and mouse and so forth. And there's a special that's on. And I don't think anybody here will be a member already, but anybody who is a member, don't need to renew membership. All of our active members are getting an additional year for free. So additional material that is in the PDF file, locking down an external drive to a single drive letter can be very handy, so that I think everybody's probably run into the situation where you plug in a drive into a computer, it comes up as drive E or whatever, and then another time you plug it in and it comes up as drive F or G. Well, if your backup system is set to, copy backups to drive E, and you plug in your external drive at some point and it comes up as drive G, you're going to have to adjust something so that the backup runs properly. More information in there about file history in Windows 11, the workarounds for the issues caused by Microsoft. I'm not a big fan of them about this. And then using Free File Sync as a replacement for file history. I've got a bunch of slides in the PDF file on that as well. So that's all, folks. I'll leave this up for just a few seconds. It's in the chat, but you can also get a screen capture of that, and you can download the PDF file from that URL. And with that, I'd like to throw it open to any questions or comments. I will now stop my screen sharing. And in case people came late, I will copy that into the chat again. Okay, any questions?
When you say that imaging copies everything, do you mean all of the programs, apps, and everything?
Yep. Yep. It'll be absolutely everything. And including what I really recommend is that you don't do just drive C, you do all the partitions on the storage device, because there are partitions on that drive that are required to boot Windows. And there will also be recovery partitions if you have a name brand computer that the manufacturer put on the drive so that they can get you back to a factory fresh configuration with a magic set of keystrokes. So if you back up the entire disk, then you'll capture all of that stuff. So if you have a disaster and you do a recovery, you'll be back in business to the state the computer was in when the backup started.
Well, if you have those divisions, how do you tell it that you want the whole computer?
Yeah, when you do the recovery, you could do it either disk or partition mode, and that's where you would go if you want to recover an entire partition or an entire disk, and you would just then point to what partitions you want recovered. And so if you do it the recommended way I have, where you're just backing up all partitions on the drive, you would just say, I want to recover this entire physical drive, and just it'll recreate the partitions, give you back all your operating system programs and your data.
So what is your external device that you're backing up to?
Right now, I'm backing up to a 14 terabyte external drive. And on that, I use it for multiple things, but I have backups for pretty much a full year, where I can recover to the day. So if I wanted to, I could recover to the state my computer was in on September 15th, 2025.
Well, the reason I'm asking, I have an external hard drive that I'm backing up to all the time.
Yeah, what are you using to back up?
I'm trying to think of the name of it and I can't. It's just one of those common brands.
Okay. Now this is what I hear from this from a lot of people, and they'll buy, Western Digital, and it comes with backup software, and they just say okay, and they turn it on. They have no idea how it works, and they have no idea how to recover, which is important. So if you
Hmm.
don't understand your backup solution, then are you going to be able to recover from it? Are you going to be able to recover everything? Your operating system programs? Is it just your data? You have to have that sort of level of understanding in order to be properly protected.
Well, I think that's possible, but I can't remember the brand right now.
Yeah,
It's a common brand that you can buy at Staples.
yeah. I never use the programs that come with drives. I don't think they are really comprehensive in terms of all of their capabilities and so forth. And there are the free options like Paragon, like EaseUS, that are available that you can run free of charge. They have paid versions that have either faster operation or they have additional capabilities. But the basic image capabilities of being able to do full and incremental backups, being able to recover from a flash drive, all of that is all in the free versions of the program. So I'm perfectly happy with the free version on the programs. I actually did pay for the one copy of EaseUS to do backup, the paid version, just because it had a couple of extra features that I thought were nice. But for my laptop computers and that, I just use the free version.
I have a question. Using file history, when the external drive fills up, how do you then expand it do you have to get a larger external hard drive or can you?
No, what you would do at that point is you go into the recovery. Actually, I could let me see. Can I show on here? Um, I'm on Windows 11, so I'm on the lobotomized version of things, but I should be able to do it through that. Let me actually just share my screen again. Uh,
I went to look. It's a Seagate.
yeah, that's one of the common ones for sure.
2 terabytes.
So if I go into Control Panel and File History, and then so you can see it's actually running on mine. Advanced Settings, Cleanup Versions. So this is what I would do. Is if I ran out of space on there, I currently have it. Let me just go back and see if I can see what my settings are. Settings. Okay, so I have it set to keep save versions 6 months. I thought I had it longer than that, but anyway. Okay, so it's set to automatically just delete older files older than 6 months. Say I ran out of space on that drive. What I could do is come into the cleanup versions, and I could say clean up ones that are older than 3 months, and that would delete those versions of files that were older than 3 months, keeping, my most recent 3 months worth of files. So that's what I would do with file history is just do a cleanup of older versions of files. It doesn't take that much space in order to have file history running. Like if I'm on 6 months now, it's probably my important data files, which are all my libraries and everything like that. It's probably using about, I would guess at this point, about 150 gigs of space. So it's really not a lot of space that is used there. But that's what you would do is clean up versions.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, Chris. And I guess it's we're done for the evening.
Okay, yeah, and everybody's got my email address there. So if you have any questions, by all means, email me, and I'm happy to help out with any questions or issues you've got. But I think that it's not that difficult to make sure that you have a good backup strategy that you can recover from any sort of disaster that'll happen. So, my pleasure to share what I know about backups. So,
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
no
Thank you.
problem at all.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You.